I would like to talk about a team that deals with very, very difficult situations professionally. I'm not talking about Bombardier project managers, actually. I'm talking about FBI hostage negotiation teams. Actually, what we tend to forget is we are confronted with emotions. And that's the thing that catches us off guard, that we are somehow confronted with strong emotions and irrational behavior. Yeah? So when we are confronted with that, we seem to be out of weapons, out of tools, because we are all so trained to be rational and logical and predictable, and then somebody behaves absolutely irrational in front of us. So what do we do with that? So what I would like to talk about is the FBI crisis intervention model. And so when you hear this, and you look at the movies, and you look at the TV shows that you see, what you might be expecting in terms of such an FBI model might be something like this. You know, I mean, this is the SWAT team, and their model is don't lie unless you expect to kill the person. Yes, well, that would be one model, right? But actually, when we look a bit deeper, it's a bit different than that. It actually looks a bit more like that. It actually looks a bit more like psychology, like practical psychology. And so it has different steps to it. So first of all, how do they work? So FBI crisis negotiators, what they do is they come in teams. They're never alone. They lead, they have a lead, and they have a backup negotiator. So somebody who has the task to connect with a person, with the hostage taker, and another person who is there just in case there's no connection built, chemistry isn't working. So they have a chance to have a backup to connect. They have an intelligence officer. So the intelligence officer takes care who are the hostages, who are the hostage takers, who are other stakeholders involved, who do we need to talk to. They get all the background information. There's a communications officer. A communications officer takes care of, so this is the building, how do I get electricity under my control? How do I get water under my control? How do I get food under my control? What else? What are other parties, other forces that I need to influence in order to get control about the situation? They have a so-called tactical team. A tactical team is code language, obviously, for the SWAT unit. So they are the last resort if things go south. However, they are used only in a fraction of cases, and typically when fatalities happen, they happen obviously when the tactical teams get hurt. And then, interestingly, they have a team psychologist. So they have somebody that is actually taking care of the crisis unit, because these people are under a tremendous amount of stress and need to be very, very good and very effective in self-management. So there's a particular model that we have that they are using, and this model is called the behavioral change stairway model. And it works in hostage situations, but it pretty much works in all other crisis situations as well. And it's a bit counterintuitive. It starts with listening. It starts with listening. What does the other person have to say? Funny enough, the next thing is empathy. So the moment or the way to get control about the behavior of another person is to show that you care for them. The next thing is rapport. So rapport is a term that is not often used. So rapport is something like when chemistry kind of starts to work. When you have the feeling that, oh, what I'm saying is landing with the other person. The fact that I'm listening to the person actually does something to them. Once you have rapport, you have built trust, you have shown empathy, you have shown that you understand the other person's view of the world, then you can start influence. And the question is, how can you influence? You can start guiding. You can start guiding by giving options. We can do this, we can do that, or we can do that, right? But by the moment that you're giving options, you're actually guiding the decision-making process. And you're narrowing it down to a hopefully good outcome and helping both parties to get out of that situation. And what then follows is change. Right? What then follows is, how can I actually change behavior? How can I come to a situation where both parties come to an agreeable outcome? This only works because we as humans have a couple of things in common. So think about, you take a hostage taker and you take a hostage negotiator. What do both of them have as common interests? Both sides want to stay alive. So that's one thing in common, right? So there's a few things that you can assume are the same, right? So what are the commonalities? And then there's a couple of differences, and how do we take care of them, okay? So in such a situation, there's 3 critical moments, right? So the first moment is when the hostage-taking occurs. So that's the start of the crisis. So then everything is out of control, things tend to get out of hand, people get shot, people get injured, and then somehow the situation stabilizes, right? They're somewhere in a hideaway, and then the communication officers try to establish communication channels, so they have some sort of a throw phone or a walkie-talkie that they get in so that they have direct lines of communication that can actually influence the situation. Then it stabilizes. The next risky situation is the end of the crisis, because first reason, start of the crisis, emotions. Amygdala is involved. There's a lot of adrenaline, the brain is flooded, our neocortex is kind of shut down, right? End of the crisis, same thing, different situation. So you're kind of giving up, or you think you're getting something. There's the risk of being killed at the very spot. So they are flooded with adrenaline. So it is very, very easy for things to go wrong from there. And then there's the tactical actions when actually the SWAT team kind of moves in, right? These are the 3 critical situations. Let's talk about the attitude of a hostage negotiator. So if we define attitude by 2 dimensions, on the one hand side there's self-confidence. So self-confidence, like, I'm good at what I'm doing, I'm in control to the degree that I can be in control of the situation. And I'm also empathetic. Where would you see a good hostage negotiator on this chart? So it's the combination of strong self-confidence, strong centeredness, strong availability of resources in combination with a good rapport, a good understanding, a good connection with the other person. So let's look at that into more detail. So listening, what about listening? So listening has to do with listen to understand. So very often in conversations, we listen just in order to have a pause to think what we're going to say next. But we're not listening to what the person is saying. And if we're listening to what the person is saying, we're listening to the words. We're not listening to the pitch. We're not listening to the volume. We're not listening to understand. So the idea is to go deeper and to try to find out what is the person actually saying. Don't be defensive. So building rapport has to do with being affirmative, of being supportive. Yes, I listen to you. I hear what you're saying, right? So building this connection, using affirmative body signals, right? So if you have a situation that you can see the other person, an affirmative body signal would be, for example, nodding, or it would maybe not be this, you know. So how can I use my body language for that? Open-ended questions. Yes, we all know this from the textbook, but people, if you analyze yourself and you ask, first of all, the ratio of questions asked in a typical conversation is less than 5%. Open-ended questions are questions that cannot be answered to with a yes or no. Empathy. That seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? There's somebody with a gun taking hostages and you are supposed to develop empathy for them. Somebody's executing violence, somebody's executing power on you, and you have to sort out the situation. So the first element is showing respect. So what can you do to show respect? There's different things, right? First of all, is listen, the tone of your voice. How do you treat the person? How do you address the person, right? I mean, all of them are signs of respect. Trying to understand the motivation. There's a reason why a person is behaving like that. You might not agree with the behavior, but what is their motivation? What drives them? Why do they do this? Why do they get out there and risk their lives in order to change something, to have an impact with something? Even if you don't agree with the motivation, helping to understand is key. Acknowledging the emotions. So we are not trained as business managers, we're not trained to talk about emotions. And that is a challenge because emotions are there, right? And we tend to ignore them, we tend to pretend they are not there, but by not addressing them, we are losing out on something. And this is something that we will address today. And the next thing is trying to see the world through their perspective. So what is it that they see? Moving over to rapport. So then we have the situation of, okay, so we have this situation, we are listening, we are showing empathy, and then we have first signs of rapport, right? So that could be, I mirror the choice of words. So if somebody that I'm talking to is has a very kind of not polished language, I may choose to adjust. I focus on body language, if I can, right? If I'm over the phone, body language seems to be less of an important, but we will hear Mike and Joanna talk about the importance of body language even when you're working over the phone. So how do you make use of your body with that? And then there is an interesting phenomenon. Rapport is not only to pace, meaning like you sync up your rapport, but once you've synced it up, the next thing is that you lead, that you start slowly influencing the way you communicate, by slowly using different types of words, a different pitch, different speed, a different volume, and obviously avoiding confrontation like, this is a very unproductive conversation. That is something that breaks rapport. And if you break rapport, you fall down the stairs and you start from level 1 again. So that's the art. The next thing is influencing. So how can I influence behavior? Stay calm and collected. Very, very simple, right? When you are confronted with heavy emotions. It's not simple at all, right? That takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of stamina. On the one hand side, to notice your emotions, but to not let them take control about yourself. That is a skill. That's a very important skill in crisis situation. The other thing is, what you will see, you will experience strong emotions, and the tendency is to react on these emotions. However, the point is, emotions are an expression of a need. So a need, for example, could be, I need to take control. I need to achieve something, and I need your help for that. And then start to lead, right? Leading would be, okay, we can do A, B, C. What do you prefer? You are in charge, but these are the options that we have. Do you see other options? Okay, we can do D. Let's discuss D, right? But you're starting to lead the entire process towards a solution. You start to explain consequences. If we do this, we cannot do the other thing. You cannot have both. If we do this, we need something from you, right? So there's a rule. It's a game, if you want. It's a negotiation game. However, lives are at stake, which is why it's definitely not funny. And most times it doesn't feel as fun as all. But there's a rule behind that. And show commitment, like show that you're engaged, show that you want to impact, show that you want to support, show that you want to get out of the situation. So how do we change behavior then? So that's the last thing. One thing is, building trust requires follow-up. Means, if I agreed on something, and there's my part to deliver, I need to keep my promises. By keeping my promises, I am strengthening my position. I said, I have done this, I've committed to do this, I've done it. And now I can ask for tit for tat. I can say, I've done that, now I want you to help me. With that you build trust, and eventually you reach an agreement. So let's have a look at a real situation. So that was Hollywood's version. Let's look at a real situation. This is the Delaware prison riot from February of this year. What happened was that a group of inmates took control, and they actually killed one of the guards, and they wanted to achieve something. So the situation is as follows. They took control, the situation got out of hand, somebody got killed. They have released all the hostages, but a lot of hostages. They are now negotiating, and the lead negotiator from the hostage takers wants to speak to the governor of the state Delaware to talk about the conditions in the prison. There was a lot of listening going on. At one point he's saying, I hear that you are tired. It's been a day for you as well. It's been a day for us as well. So there's empathy at stake, right? So what do you want? Okay, you want to talk to the governor. Do you think it is that simple, right? Then I'm saying, so I'm normalizing, I'm giving the background, I'm giving the context, I'm giving options. I'm saying, we want to talk to Floyd, who's one of the hostages, and the other one wants to talk to the governor in exchange. And now the question is, obviously, we have talked about that for a reason. How can you apply this in the boardroom? How can you apply this when you're taking hostage off, or you feel like that? How can you use that when you're confronted with strong emotions on the other side? Right? How can you influence your own attitude? How can you influence your own behavior? How can you be, on the one hand side, empathetic and self-confident at the same time in order to take control of the situation? So one thing that I've learned from Mike, actually, when you're on stage, does a presentation, say thank you so that people can applaud. So thank you.